Zombies. You've seen them in movies.
Zombies are the most frightening monster in history.
Is there any truth to their story?
Every culture creates its own version of zombie.
Could they be real?
There have been diseases throughout history that have mimicked the behaviors of the zombie virus. The plausibility, it's there.
You would never be up against one zombie. You would be up against thousands or millions.
How would you survive? What would you do day to day?
It is total destruction, the zombie spine cut in half.
Are you ready for a zombie apocalypse?
CDC wrote on the CDC's official blog a piece about zombie preparedness. And his point was that preparing for a zombie apocalypse is exactly like preparing for all of the other disasters that we've been hearing about for the last 10 or 15 or so years.
When they came and asked me about it, I said, absolutely, establish a zombie task force, and let's think about a creative way to engage people in thinking about their own personal preparedness.
Zombies are the perfect 21st century threat. If you think about the sort of common threats that we have to cope with, pandemics, climate change, terrorist attacks, zombies perfectly map onto these kind of ill-defined threats.
If you can get a bunch of young people to start learning about stocking up on food and water and medical gear, it doesn't matter whether you tell them zombies or not. The point is, they're ready.
A zombie attack would be a crisis on an unimaginable scale. What would a zombie invasion look like? The apocalypse would probably begin quietly. A few unfortunate doctors would see the first infections.
In a zombie apocalypse, a hospital, any hospital where victims are brought, will be ground zero.
Hospitals routinely go through disaster drills. We had a disaster drill where we had 20 of our employees acting as patients. And even though our hospital was fairly large, it really stretched the resources of the hospital to deal with patients in the 20s. Can you imagine if we were faced with patients in the thousands?
It's a numbers game that makes the zombie apocalypse so terrifying and so devastating in terms of optimism.
First responders would have little time to react, as hospitals would quickly become overwhelmed.
The first line of defense for a zombie outbreak is to keep our heads. And I mean that both literally and figuratively, to say this is something we haven't seen before. It's something that we've gotten better at in the last 10 years or so because of the emergence of pandemics.
When somebody is brought in who's infected, the responding doctors, they're going to see unusual symptoms. They might try treating it with drugs, but they're not going to know to approach it as something that needs to be absolutely stopped. Doctors aren't going to kill patients to prevent them from infecting others.
As the infection spreads and the population succumbs to the virus, the infrastructure would collapse.
It won't take long for the grid to go down. You see disruptions in electric, gas, things like that, because there simply wouldn't be enough people to occupy those positions and keep the infrastructure up and running.
The social order would start to crumble.
As soon as the governments fail, there'll be a short time that we as a society try to maintain an order. Because we do not have a central figurehead, it's going to become a number of different pockets battling each other for order, and then everything breaks loose.
With supply systems disrupted, finding food and water would become a life or death struggle.
Because of globalization, we as a society have become more dependent on same-day fresh delivery. What's going to happen when those trucks aren't rolling? What's going to happen when the ships stop sailing and when the planes stop flying? The scary thing about a zombie apocalypse is they can kill us in so many ways that have nothing to do with actual physical contact. They can kill us by starvation, by dehydration, by disease.
As in any disaster, survival would depend on good communication, using what's left of the media to share information with anyone left alive.
First line of defense against a zombie outbreak would be a communication of information. If we kept ourselves together, if we were able to understand the nature of the threat, then things like cell phones and the internet, texting, that's going to be our first line of defense. It kind of sounds funny that Twitter might actually stand between us and the apocalypse, but it could very well be the thing.
Communication will be essential, but it will not be enough. The military would have to marshal its arsenal to fight the zombie horde, and fighting an army of zombies would require an entirely new military strategy.
Modern armies are going to have to rethink their strategy when dealing with undead hordes. They're going to have to know the tactics on how to evade their enemy. I think that the modern army is going to shoot a lot less and evade a lot more when it comes to going against a zombie horde. You shoot a gun once to take out one zombie, there could be 10,000 around the corner that heard the shot.
Even with a new strategy, no army could win on its own. We would also depend on the international community to seal off borders to isolate the infected country and stop the spread of the zombie virus.
Germs don't know national borders. Germs don't understand national policies.
There's a real incentive to very quickly identify what's going on and sharing that information. You get help from other countries to help you take care of your own outbreak, and you get additional information to try to quickly understand how to get rid of the outbreak.
Past pandemics have shown us that open communication between governments and citizens is crucial in stopping a deadly outbreak.
Authoritarian regimes are very reluctant to admit that they have a problem. Think back to 2003 when the SARS epidemic first broke out in China, the extent to which China concealed information that was vital for the rest of the world to know.
What they learned is that willingness to selectively release information actually put them at greater risk, not lesser risk. They actually had to sort of branch out and embrace the world in order to help themselves.
The SARS outbreak was the sentinel outbreak for the worldwide community, and it's highly less likely nowadays that countries would not report what's going on.
Can we depend on the government to save us from total annihilation? Recent history has shown us that governments may not always be our most reliable asset during major catastrophes.
Katrina showed us what a zombie apocalypse might look like, in that you saw a complete breakdown of the system at every level, from the president down to the New Orleans Police Department. You really saw a city disintegrate day after day after day, right down to people standing on their roofs, holding up signs, screaming for help, which is exactly what you would see in a zombie outbreak.
The lessons learned after events like Katrina have helped governments around the world rethink their disaster response strategies. But in the face of a zombie apocalypse, even their best efforts might not be good enough.
All bureaucracies out there, including public health and first responder bureaucracies, are trained to deal with standard operating procedures. They all develop standard operating procedures as a way to sort of routinize their interactions with the outside world. I think it's safe to say that the living dead would represent a non-standard outcome. So in all likelihood, if they were to deal with them at first, they simply wouldn't know that they were making mistakes, and they would, as a result, make those mistakes. The bureaucratic politics on this issue would be bloody in every sense of the word.
If we can't count on the government to save us, and we can't save ourselves, then what?
Now, the mistake a lot of people make is that they only worry about the zombie's mouth and don't understand that there are two outstretched hands looking to grab you in as well. This triangular sector comprised of the mouth and the hands is what I call the fatal funnel. What you want to do is avoid the fatal funnel by stepping off and checking the hand. Grab the throat, hook the leg, push the head. Now, where the head goes, the body will follow. And from here, you can either make your escape or finish your opponent with a head stomp.
Our worst nightmare has occurred. Zombies have invaded, and the devastation has been total. A new generation emerges to rebuild. Generation Z.
The generation of children that grew up in a zombie plague would have grown up in hardship, and they would be a lot tougher. They would be the equivalent of my grandparents of the Second World War, who, till the day they died, still washed their plastic bags and put water in the grape juice bottle because we had to make it last.
When you compare the generations and how they might fare in a zombie apocalypse, of course, we can go back to the greatest generation of World War II. They were very rugged individuals. They came through the Depression. They came through a hard war.
As society rebuilds, What will the new world look like?
After a zombie apocalypse, the economy is going to shift dramatically to more of a barter and producing-based economy. We're going to be forced to produce to consume, and learning how to make things with your hands is going to become very important.
High-tech industries will vanish as a post-apocalyptic society prioritizes more basic human needs.
Anyone who is not immediately able to contribute to either defense or the supply chain are going to be very much secondary citizens.
Professions that are going to be of extreme value are going to be sectors that actually do things that